Hello, everyone. We're very excited to have Marek here. For those of you who don't know, Cello, C Labs, and its universe of related projects have done some incredible work in the public good sphere. Encourage you to look up more, and we're going to explore a little bit about Marek's experience and where his specialties lie. But very, very values-aligned project, so please go check out Cello. I know there's some T-shirts, so feel free to grab a Cello T-shirt as well. We'll jump right in, and we're going to sit with this example of FiatConnect. But before we jump in, I think for the crowd, can you give us a little bit more detail about what's your background? How did you journey to Web3, and how did that evolve into the work you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started thinking about Cello 5 years ago, and when we started, we actually started with the wallet. So we wanted to build a really easy-to-use mobile wallet that could work like a global Venmo, where anybody could send value to anywhere in the world and it would be immediately useful, even if you didn't have a government-recognized ID. And we tried to build that on Ethereum, and we learned pretty quickly that Ethereum wasn't the right platform to build something that was super easy to use and would enable the experience that we wanted. And so that took us down the path of launching our own platform, Cello. And ultimately, that took us down the path of really spending a lot of effort on and off ramps, which will be kind of the topic of today. There were a few goals. One was to achieve a very broad geographic support. I think there's already a lot of on and off ramps. I mentioned a few, the ramps, the wires, the MoonPays. They do an amazing job supporting some of the bigger markets, some of the developed markets. And it makes sense, they're going after where the volumes are highest and where they can make the most money. But ultimately, if we want to reach a world where anyone, anywhere in the world can cash in and out trivially from within their mobile wallet, we need coverage globally. And so we structured the competition in a way where it incentivized on and off ramps in any country in the world to compete. As long as you're in a market with over 2 million people, the competition pays out the same amount as if you pick a market that's really, really big. And that has this nice property of leveling the playing field and incentivizing anybody who has an on and off ramp license, typically a money transmission license, to quickly build out support for FiatConnect and to launch anywhere where they may be. And I think doing that in a non-competition way would have been interesting. It would have been, I think, it would have been perhaps challenging to reach those folks who have those MTL licenses. Whereas doing it in a competition that can get a lot of noise that people can talk about, we thought would have a higher chance of reaching those folks. And then the other, I think, really important piece was we wanted to actually reward folks retroactively for doing the work. The last session talked a lot about the value of retroactive payments, and that certainly is something that we believe in and something that competitions actually lend themselves really well to. And so the prize money only goes out once someone has actually integrated and launched and then also meets certain quality metrics. So they have to hit certain acceptance rates before they're eligible for the prize money. And that's something that's a little harder to do with a typical quadratic voting funding mechanism. Which again pushed us in the direction of the competition.
And I think one thing I want to emphasize that I thought was really interesting about the way that you structured it is it's almost a two-part program. And at the beginning, there's an incentive for early and the first adopters to take this up because there's a specific separate prize. And then after that, there's a support component for continued operation of this. Can you talk a little bit more about how you thought about creating two different prizes and components of it and the behavior that you were trying to create because of that?
Yeah, and we did that because of feedback that we got from on and off ramp providers. So the prize money goes, there's a portion that goes to the on and off ramp company as a reward for launching and hitting those quality metrics. And then there's another portion that goes towards offsetting any fees that they may want to charge for their customers. So that customers can start using the product with no fees and so that they can grow adoption. And the reason that they wanted this piece was because they wanted to book recurring revenue and not just a one-time kind of reward that would make it harder to go out and fundraise on all the progress they were making. And so there's those two components. And what's interesting is because the payout is in Cello, which is a deflationary asset, has a fixed supply. There's two elements that are going to motivate folks to move quickly. One is, you have to be first in your country. If you don't launch first, you don't get the prize. And so you have this pretty strong incentive to try to move quickly, faster than others. But then the other interesting thing is, as the network effects of this standard grow, the value of the network grows as well. So if you get rewarded earlier, then you're more likely to get rewarded at a time before these full network effects are realized. And so you can actually also gain value by moving quickly relative to other people in other countries as well. And that we thought was pretty interesting. And we're seeing it play out now. There's certainly a lot of folks who I would say probably wouldn't have moved as quickly as possible if we just gave them a grant to do this, because there's an element of potentially losing the reward if they move too slowly. Folks are actually integrating quite quickly. There's, the program was launched in April, and there's already, give or take, around 50 companies that are in flight for this. And so that's a pretty cool, that's a pretty impressive number. I think they're targeting just over 50 markets. Some of these companies support multiple markets, but also some companies overlap and are going after the same markets. So it nets out at a similar number of markets, the number of companies that are doing this. And I think that's a really great response to something that was launched so recently in a down market. We're definitely very pleased.
First of all, it's incredible having so many teams already working, and it's a good proof of how this competition can be an effective means to create incentives. I guess my question to you is, as this is developed, how has the behavior met your expectations, and what are the things that have emerged that you did not expect? Has anything surprised you from the way that people behaved and the action that was created because of this incentive system?
I think what's been interesting is certainly the interest has been good, and I think, again, that's really good for the public good. I think that's great for crypto. I can't wait for the day where everyone anywhere in the world can cash in and out trivially into stable coins. I think it's really going to help onboard all of those normies we're waiting for, the elusive normies. And so I think that part is going really well. The part that surprised me, I would say, is the amount of interest in contributing to FiatConnect. I thought most of these on and off ramps would simply implement it, but I would say there's a good amount of interest in also extending it to support different payment types, different KYC flows, even different authentication flows that people were asking for. And I think that's been both a pleasant surprise, but also it creates more overhead on the FiatConnect maintainers, and so it's definitely a double-edged sword.
So let's think about the future after that. So, as a public good, FiatConnect faces some of the same funding issues that a typical public good was. How do you scale this by orders of magnitude? How do you ensure that it's maintained? How do you ensure that the development is consistent? How do you foster that community that is growing around it? What do you think of the future of FiatConnect? It seems like this community competition is like a necessary impulse function to get the community going, spread adoption, and start creating some of those network effects. How do you think of it in your head about is there another model that comes into play for longer term sustainability of this project? Is it continue to create enough value for the ecosystem of Cello and related ecosystems that it becomes more of an ecosystem funded project? Or does it become something that has its own kind of revenue capture itself, or value capture that allows it to self-sustain?
Yeah, really great question. So it's certainly going to be bigger than just for Cello. I think there's a whole bunch of wallets now that are looking at this that are outside of the Cello ecosystem, that are very interested in using this. Certainly once there's hundreds of companies, both on the wallet side and on the on and off ramp side, using this, then they have a pretty strong incentive to work together to keep maintaining it. But like any public good, I think it always is a challenge to fund. I think FiatConnect is an interesting, parallel. FiatConnect is kind of this public good that connects wallets to dApps. Obviously, it's really changed the way that we connect wallets and dApps, and has made it much, much easier for folks to implement the standard once and never have to think about it again. And suddenly if you're a wallet developer, you can connect to multiple dApps and vice versa. I think they've done a great job of seeking grant funding from the broader community, and I think that's a really great kind of avenue for FiatConnect in the future as well. I think maybe there's a world where FiatConnect might launch a token as well. And so certainly something that FiatConnect will look at. Maybe that's a path forward too. It certainly worked for other public goods. You can also just take a fee without even having your own token. Although there is definitely something nice to having governance be in a fully decentralized way as well for public goods. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
And one last kind of like prompt to throw over to you is, you mentioned a few potential options like tokenization, existing grant programs, leveraging some of the infrastructure that's coming out. What is, as somebody who's been around this public good space for a while, what are the most exciting things, or the one or two top things that kind of catch your interest in terms of funding entity design, funding mechanism design, like novel concepts that are coming out that you wish people would pay more attention to?
Hypercert. That was a really great presentation. I think in the Celo ecosystem, there's a ton of refi happening in the ecosystem. Celo, actually one of the first, you guys might like this, one of the first governance proposals ever done on the Celo platform 2.5 years ago was to offset the carbon that the platform contributes to. Celo is proof of stake and highly scalable, so it's not much carbon, but already 2.5 years ago, we wanted to put a stake in the ground and say that Celo is different, and that it's helping, not contributing to climate change. And so that took us down the path of really looking into voluntary carbon offset credits. And now there's a whole manner of really exciting protocols on Celo. I agree with the Hypercert folks. I think there is something amazing about how capital markets can really efficiently deploy capital when you create a system that lets them do that. And so I'm pretty excited to see how it goes and how it gets applied to other systems. As like one example, there's a protocol on Celo called Plastics. And they've already started doing this for plastic offsetting. And so if you're a Grubhub or another delivery company, you're contributing a lot of plastic waste. And simply by buying these plastic NFTs or tokens, you can help incentivize the collection and recycling of plastic from oceans and from cities. And so I think that's a really interesting example. It's not quite carbon, it's in the kind of refi space. And clearly it works. It's been working pretty well. And so I'm excited to see how this can progress to other areas, not just refi, but a whole bunch of different public goods.
Thank you so much, Marek. I think we're at time. I will also mention two final things. Celo has a lot of incredible work that they've done in the past. I think there's a lot of very interesting way that you've designed like your protocol and your ecosystem around public goods and the causes and like the mission orientation that you care about. So I encourage people to look more at Celo and the work that they do. Other than that, I will say that there are Celo t-shirts. I know Marek has been kind enough to bring a bunch out, so please grab them when you can. And I just want to, finally
stickers.
And stickers. So thank you so much, Marek. Really interesting the work that you're doing, and excited to see what happens next with FiatConnect.
Thank you so much.